You don't have a personality, you have a job description your parents gave you at 7. Let me tell you what happened. Somewhere around first or second grade, you stopped being a child and became a deputy parent. Not because you chose it, because the family system needed it. Your mother was overwhelmed, your father was absent or checked out, and someone had to hold it together. That someone was you. And here's the part that makes this so insidious: you were good at it. You were so good at reading the room, managing your siblings' emotions, predicting what would make things easier for everyone else, that the role became permanent. You weren't assigned this consciously. No one sat you down and said, "Here's your new identity." But every time you successfully kept the peace, every time you made yourself smaller so others could be bigger, every time you swallowed your own needs to manage someone else's crisis, the role calcified a little more. By the time you were 10, you had a fully operational job description where a personality should have been. I remember sitting across from someone, let's call her Maya, who told me she just turned 35 and realized she had no idea what kind of music she actually liked. Not what her college friends played at those cramped apartment parties. Not what made good background noise while she organized everyone else's lives, calendars, and crises. What she liked. She laughed when she said it, that hollow laugh you make when something is too sad to cry about. She'd spent 3 decades becoming fluent in other people's preferences, needs, moods, schedules. She could tell you what her younger sister needed to hear after a breakup, the exact words, the specific silence. She knew what tone would de-escalate her mother's Sunday afternoon anxiety spirals, exactly how to manage her boss's impossible expectations before they became emergencies. But her own favorite song, the one that made her heart lift when no one was watching, the question didn't compute. Because favorite implies preference, and preference requires a self. Psychologists have a term for this: role foreclosure. It's what happens when your identity gets locked into a single role before you've had the chance to explore who you might actually be. Adolescence is supposed to be the moratorium period, the developmental window where you try on different identities, fail safely, discover what fits. But if you're busy parenting your parents, mediating your siblings, managing household chaos, that window closes before you ever get to look through it. Dr. Lisa Firestone's research on identity formation found that parentified children skip the exploration phase entirely. They move directly from childhood into a fixed role, bypassing the experimentation that builds authentic selfhood, and that role becomes the only self they know. You never got to be bad at things, to stumble through a terrible haircut phase or quit piano after 2 lessons. You never got to be selfish, confused, gloriously irresponsible, testing boundaries just to see where they were. Here's the cruelest part: you were rewarded for it. Every time you sacrificed yourself, you were called mature, responsible, so wise beyond your years. Adults praised you with words that felt like gold stars on a chart you couldn't see. And because you were a child starving for approval, you believed that was love. You believed that your worth was directly proportional to your usefulness. So you optimized for usefulness like a machine learning its primary function. You became the person who could handle anything, who never needed anything, who made everything easier for everyone. The one who stayed quiet during their own birthday dinner to avoid conflict. And it worked. Until one day you're sitting in your apartment at 32 and someone asks you what you want for dinner and you freeze. Not because you're indecisive, but because the question assumes you have desires that exist independently of what would make this moment easier for someone else. And you're not sure you do. That's not a personality trait. Let's talk about what this actually looks like in your nervous system. When you're parentified young, your brain prioritizes threat detection and other-oriented cognition. A 2019 study published in Development and Psychopathology found that children in caregiving roles show hyperactivation in the anterior cingulate cortex, the part of your brain responsible for monitoring conflict and predicting others' emotional states. Your brain literally rewires itself to put other people's needs in the foreground, pruning away neural pathways meant for self-awareness while strengthening circuits tuned to external emotional frequencies. And here's what that means decades later. You walk into a room and immediately scan for tension, your eyes darting to clenched jaws and crossed arms. You can sense a mood shift before anyone speaks, detecting the quarter-second delay in someone's smile. You know who needs reassurance, who's about to explode, who's secretly disappointed by the angle of their shoulders. But if someone asks how you're feeling, you short-circuit, because your internal monitoring system never developed. Maya told me about the moment it all cracked. She was at brunch with friends and someone asked her a simple question: if you could do anything this weekend with 0 obligations, what would you do? And she opened her mouth to answer and realized she was calculating. What answer would make her seem interesting but not selfish? What activity would be easy to coordinate if anyone wanted to join? What wouldn't create complications for next week's schedule? And then it hit her. She wasn't choosing. She was optimizing for a performance of choosing. She'd been doing it so long she couldn't tell the difference anymore. She excused herself, went to the bathroom, and stared at her own face in the mirror like she was looking at a stranger, because in a very real sense she was. The person everyone knew, everyone relied on, everyone called competent, that person was real, but it wasn't her, it was the role, and she had no idea who was underneath it. This is what psychologists call identity diffusion, but that term makes it sound passive, like something that just happened to you. It wasn't passive, it was theft. Your family needed a mediator, a manager, a second parent, and you were drafted. And because children are survival machines, you complied, you became what was needed. But here's the part that makes this so hard to undo. You were never taught that you're allowed to be anything else. The idea that you could exist for your own sake, that your preferences could matter even when they inconvenience someone, that you could want something just because you want it, those ideas never made it into your operating system. So now you're an adult who functions flawlessly on the outside, but inside there's just a list of protocols. You're not depressed exactly, you're not anxious in the clinical sense, you're empty, and emptiness doesn't get diagnosed, it just gets lived. Maya spent the next 6 months doing something that felt absurd and terrifying. She started saying, "I don't know." When someone asked her opinion, instead of instantly calculating the most helpful answer, she said, "I don't know yet, let me think about it." When friends made plans, instead of immediately coordinating, she asked herself first, "Do I actually want to go?" And here's what happened. Nothing fell apart. Her relationships didn't collapse. People didn't abandon her. In fact, some of them started showing up differently because they finally had room to. But the hardest part wasn't other people's reactions. It was sitting with the silence inside herself. The space where a preference should be, where a desire should rise up easily, and finding nothing, not because she was broken, but because that ground had never been tilled. She was learning, at 35, how to have a self, and it felt like learning to walk after decades of running on autopilot. If this is you, here's what you need to know. You're not failing at having a personality. You were never given the chance to develop one, and that's not a character flaw, it's a structural injury. The way forward isn't about finding yourself like you're a lost object under the couch. It's about building a self from scratch. That means doing things that feel pointless, sitting with your own boredom, noticing what you're drawn to when no one's watching, letting yourself want things that serve no function. It means disappointing people, not because you're careless, but because their comfort can no longer be your compass. It means getting comfortable with "I don't know, I'm still figuring it out, I need time." This will feel like free falling because the role was your gravity. But on the other side of that free fall is something you've never had, a life that belongs to you, not because you earned it by being useful, but because you exist. Here's what I wish someone had told Maya at 20 instead of 35. The role isn't you. The competence, the hyper-responsibility, the ability to manage everyone else's emotional weather, those are skills you learned. Skills you can keep or put down, but they were never your identity, even though they became the only identity you were allowed to have. You are not the job description. You never were. And the fact that you can't name who you are yet doesn't mean there's nothing there. It means you're finally creating the space to find out. That process is slow. It's uncomfortable. It doesn't look like productivity or achievement, so your nervous system will fight it. But it's the only way back to yourself, and you deserve that return. But there's one more uncomfortable truth I haven't told you yet. In tomorrow's video, we'll explore why the people who benefited most from your role will fight the hardest to keep you in it, and how to recognize emotional sabotage disguised as love. Subscribe so you don't miss it. If the video resonated with you, hit subscribe. Uncomfortable Truths drops a new uncomfortable truth tomorrow and every day after on personal finance, relationships, mindset, and productivity, and more. Turn on notifications so you're first to see it. The truth is uncomfortable, but it's always worth it.